Fresh out the oven, it's Cinema Bums. I'm Emmett.
And I'm Wade.
Cinema Bums is a podcast where we watch through every single movie in popular film franchises, one each week, to try and track how the storytelling changes over time. Today, we are beginning our new miniseries, Unforgettable, covering all the films written by Greta Gerwig. We will fully spoil today's film, but we will not spoil any future entries in the series. Wade, how are you doing?
I'm doing very good. Very excited to be taking the stairs with you today.
Oh, very exciting. And Kate, how are you doing today?
I'm great. Thank you for asking.
Fantastic. So today, this voice that you're hearing, we are honored to have a special guest. She's a writer, an improviser, and a comedian, perhaps best known to our audience for her Anna Kendrick fan podcast, Pitch Perfect Performance Every Single Time. Please welcome Kate Evans.
Woo!
Thank you. I just want to say thank you to you both. Thank you to Anna for everything she's done for the acting industry. In case anyone was wondering, she has dead eyes. She has dead eyes and she can't act.
Cut the tape. Stop the count.
I heard she was really good in this new show called The Teacher.
Okay, sure.
That's Kate Mara.
Okay, well, moving on.
Here's the other thing about Anna Kendrick. By the way, new topic for today's podcast.
Excellent.
The other thing about Anna Kendrick is that you can see the director's notes to her playing in her brain as she's acting.
Oh.
Like in Into the Woods, when she's Cinderella and she's singing whatever song she sings, you can see her being like, now I'm supposed to look sad. Now I'm supposed to look happy. Now I'm supposed to walk up and down the stairs. Like, it's like you, like, she's not doing it of her own volition. She's being forced to, and you can tell.
That's how I feel about Kristen Stewart, who is an actress that I kind of like, but we watched, it's called Happiest Season. It's a romantic comedy. Anyway, in that, I'm like, I like watching Kristen Stewart act. You can tell that, like, at every moment she feels deeply uncomfortable. Like, she's like, the thing I hate the most is being on camera. I hate that there is a camera pointed at me. I am, like, trying so hard to act as though I feel a certain way, although I am very self-conscious about doing that.
That's how Anna Kendrick is, except you can also tell that she thinks she's doing a great job.
No, you're right. Anna Kendrick is like, yes, and I belong here.
I
have arrived.
Yes.
So I love that we were talking about your previous experience with movies. But what about your previous experience with this movie?
Oh, okay.
Hannah Takes the Stairs. The movie we were discussing today, Hannah Takes the Stairs by Greta Gerwig.
I have had no previous experience with this movie. Little previous experience with Greta Gerwig. But I liked the things that I had seen of hers beforehand, mostly.
What were those?
The movies that she's directed. So Little Women I loved, and Lady Bird I loved.
Mm-hmm.
Frances Ha, I wasn't crazy about it, but like I get it. It's like people like, it's like that thing where you watch a movie and you're like, I didn't really like that, but someone explains to you why they like it, and you're like, oh, I get it.
Right on.
I had never seen this film before. I'm not actually sure if I don't think I've seen any mumblecore films before, although I have seen a lot of movies kind of inspired by them.
Mm-hmm.
We actually, I will probably cut this part out, but just letting you guys know, we're the first people who have ever recorded a podcast about this movie.
Dude, leave it in.
Leave it in.
Yeah, for the
I
book.
want the fame, Wade.
Yeah.
That's what I
No one
signed up
else.
for this for.
Like everyone else, when you search like Lady Bird or whatever, there are like hundreds of podcast episodes about that. But we are the first people to ever record a podcast about Hannah Takes the Stairs.
Okay, so Hannah Takes the Stairs, the movie that we were talking about that no one else has ever talked about. Very exciting. 3-sentence summary of this film. It is about Hannah, a young woman who goes through 2 unpleasant breakups and one maybe marginally more pleasant getting together with someone by the end of it. Over the course of that, Hannah expresses her feelings about a lot of the world. Hannah is played by Greta Gerwig, who also co-wrote the film. She expresses a lot of her views about the world, about art, about theater, and what it can be. But the forward momentum of the plot is about her relationship with these 3 successive guys, and kind of feels like it should have the rhythm of a joke, but doesn't really.
Yeah, it's not at all like a Three Bears situation.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like one guy is too nice
Yeah,
and one
yeah.
guy's not nice enough and the third guy's right. It's just like 3 different unrelated relationships.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That all take place in about maybe 14 square feet and 3 days.
Yeah.
Oh, this was, as you said, directed by Joe Swanberg, who is a guy at the forefront of the mumblecore movement.
Mm-hmm.
This is his 3rd film that he's directed after Kissing on the Mouth and LOL.
Mm-hmm.
LOL was kind of the ones that people noticed, and then this was sort of like the breakthrough of it. It was written by him, Greta Gerwig, this is her first writing credit, and Kent Osborne, who plays Matt, the 3rd boyfriend in the film.
Oh, weird.
The 3 of them got writing credits. There's also a lot of the film that's improvised, which is kind of part of the style of this genre, which is mumblecore. As you said, there's music by Kevin Buersdorf, who is mainly an actor in these type of films, but he also scored Swanberg's film before this, LOL, and his film that came out last year, which is called Build the Wall. A very provocative title, seemingly unrelated whatsoever to any ideas you may have by hearing it. This film runs 1 hour and 23 minutes, which seems notable. The fact that it's less than 90 minutes.
Yes, it is less probably than this podcast will be.
We can't talk about a movie longer than the movie was.
Oh, we certainly can.
And this one, they were just like, it's an hour and 23, perfect length. Nothing we could cut, nothing we could add.
Yeah.
It was released August 22nd, 2007 by the company IFC Films. This movie had a budget of $60,000, which is the highest budget that Swanberg had ever worked with until his major label film in 2013. So of all of sort of the immediate pre and post movies in this mumblecore movement, this was the highest budget by far.
It had, I'm reading here, a box office of $23,000.
That's true. But this thing was not, it definitely didn't get a wide release.
Okay.
Which is where you can go to whatever, your AMC anywhere in America and see it. I don't even think it had a limited release because it's not rated.
Oh, okay.
And movies can't get released if they're not rated. So I don't think it even played at a bunch of indie theaters. I think it just played at festivals.
Okay.
Across the US. It does have this release date, but I think that means the IFC theater in New York showed it for 2 weeks.
Right. Starting
Starting that day. Also, the official movie website, which used to be a big thing for this movie, is still around. And it has a section for showings. So I think it was very much people would hear about this movie and then they would be like, hey, we're doing a festival in your town and you can come see it if you want to see it.
Okay.
Yeah. And again, for context, the first X-Men movie, which was made in the year 2000, was made for a budget of $60 million. And this was $60,000. So that's just a little comparison of how much money it costs to make a movie. This movie was fairly well received. It got a 63 on Metacritic. I have here a selection from the New York Times review by Matt Zoller Seitz. He writes, for newcomers to DIY, the movie's snappy but unadventurous style, episodic structure, deadpan performances, and raggedy improvisational dialogue make it a less than ideal introduction. For devotees, Hannah will evoke melancholy feelings, and not just because the heroine finds bliss without seriously examining preconceptions. Mr. Bajowski is writing a movie for Paramount. Mr. Duplass and his brother and filmmaking partner are writing and directing features for Universal and Fox and have already sold a television series to NBC. Mr. Swanberg and Miss Greta have already finished a new movie and are so talented that they may not have to scrounge for financing the next one. In light of all this, Hannah Takes the Stairs plays like an incidental swan song, a signpost marking the point when mumblecore became a nostalgic label rather than a present-tense cultural force. And its most acclaimed practitioners moved on to better things. Mr. Swanberg's third movie is a graduation photo in motion. DIY, Class of 07.
Where'd you find that? Pitchfork? I feel like that's really... I don't know. I haven't seen any of these other people in anything else, but I feel like that's very accurate as far as like the Greta Gerwig thing.
Yeah. So the overview of this whole scene is that it was like, and we can talk about it more and how we feel about it as we go on, but it was like a group of guys who were all doing stuff together. So like everyone in this movie was also directing other movies. And they were all acting in each other's stuff. It was a collective of like 15 dudes who were like each putting out a movie a year that they directed and wrote, and all of them were in each other's stuff. And this happened for like 5 or 6 years with some regularity.
That's really cool. I think mumblecore is cooler to think about as an artist thinking about like an ideal situation to be creating in versus actually watching any of the movies of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Because you're like, oh yeah, I would love to make movies with my friends and just like all of us hang out and be in each other's stuff and like do that all the time. But when you see the product of it, at least with the cameras that were available for cheap back in 2006, it's not pretty. Also, you just wish, I mean, I just feel like if we were going to all write stuff together, we would put a plot in it. But maybe that's because we're biased.
Well, I think that's part of like the thing that they're pushing against. I mean, they're striving for realism. But your comment about being like ideal artistic situations, I have a quote here from Swanberg.
That segue.
He says, "I'm not afraid to fail. Making a bad movie does not scare me. Every mean thing that could be written about me has already been written. I've already been poor for 10 years, and I've already made movies that nobody saw. Going back to that doesn't scare me. So it puts me in a playful, experimental point. What's the worst thing that could happen?"
That's really cool. I love that quote a lot more than the movie.
Yeah, that fills my heart with joy to hear.
I don't know. We all have like a theater background, so it's maybe we just relate that to it. Obviously, a lot of the people here do too, but it feels like it feels much more like theater to me. Like the collective and the striving for realism, and that they were each doing like one project a year that's like a new original thing that all of them put out, you know?
This is their Waiting for Lefty.
I think it also resembled a play in the prop work, which we can talk about later. But the props in this movie were out of control.
Oh my God. Okay.
The slinkies, the goggles, the little magnets she put in her mouth. I was like, put them down.
I forgot.
Put the props down. They were like, the director was like, eat the cereal as messy as you possibly can. Make it so distracting that we can't hear any of the dialogue.
So, Kate, you're a fan. You already know what's coming.
Oh, yes, of Cinema Buns, of course.
Flop or bop?
Big flop for me. Big flop.
Okay. Right on.
Yeah. What about you guys?
Okay, wait. Hannah Takes the Stairs. Flop or bop, baby?
Also a flop. Not a big flop for me, but a flop for sure.
Okay.
Emmett, flop or bop?
Flop. Not only would I never watch this movie again, I will never watch any mumblecore ever again.
Emmett, well, first of all, we will next week. Second of all, it might be a stretch to say that you even watched all of this movie.
I know. I couldn't even handle it. I couldn't sit still.
Okay,
when we were like 30 minutes to the end, so about halfway through the movie, both you and Laura started walking around, getting snacks, going to the bathroom. You were on your phone for the whole last 20 minutes. I couldn't be bothered.
I was just researching what the hell mumblecore was for the last 30 minutes, trying to see if it held any deeper meaning, and it didn't. And they were like, "Oh, we're not even a genre. It's so obscure. It's not even a genre. Whatever."
That makes me feel a lot better about how I watched this movie.
How'd you watch it?
I wasn't going to share, but I did. No. This movie was only 123 minutes, and I had to watch it in 3 sections. Like I watched like 30 minutes of it at like 3 different points over the past week.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. I'm a bad guess, but I wasn't going to be honest about that, but I'm going to be honest.
Did you split them evenly by boyfriend, or was it?
No, this is how I split them. I watched until Allie texted me, "Do you want to watch Married at First Sight?" And I said yes. Stopped watching Hannah Takes the Stairs. And I watched Married at First Sight for her, and then I forget what else made me stop and start.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to get through, isn't it?
It's so short. It's so hard to get through.
Besides the prop work,
Yeah.
what other issues do you find with this film that makes you think of it as a flop?
I didn't think anyone in this movie was likable in any way.
Mm.
I just was like, I could not, I know this is a later question and we'll get to it. I could not figure out what Hannah wanted or why she was doing anything she was doing.
Mm.
I feel like no one was like communicating with each other at all in this movie. They were not, everyone was having like so many feelings and no one would say anything about them ever, which I guess that is probably part of mumblecore. It's like this idea of like, we're not going to be too like plot heavy or introspective or say something that will like cause a conflict or an inciting action or something. We're just going to like exist like it's a normal Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
But
do you think when you say they weren't communicating, do you mean that as characters or as actors or as both?
Oh, that's a good question.
She has the monologue about how she hates, like, the problem with modern writing is that characters don't communicate with each other.
Yeah.
What was that?
She obliquely compares this movie to Shakespeare a couple of times.
Yes, you're right, Wade. Yeah, that makes this even more of a flop for me.
That makes me wonder if that was like a hostile attack on this movie from inside it. Is what that feels like in that lens to me.
They were like, let's not make this movie good. Let's make it bad and make fun of the movie that we made.
I feel like the best parts of the movie are like the 3 monologues that Greta Gerwig has about writing unrelated to the movie.
I feel like at least that was the most relatable thing she did to me, because I remember being like 22 or like just out of college or just in college even, like, and getting really into like a creative project and like feeling like it's like the most important thing in the world. And they actually talk about that in the movie too. Her first boyfriend was saying that he like broke up with a girl that he was with for forever when he was like 13 to 15 or something, because she wasn't a musician, he was. And it's that thing of when you're young, you're like, oh, I could never be with this person because they don't get my art. That's a little bit how some of her monologues felt to me, is like not that exact problem, but she was so into it. And I remember like being that into my creative work. And so that was the most relatable part of her character to me.
Do you think that part of what's going on here is that her creativity is like, she's in that mindset of where she's like trying to break out from these relationships with those people who are like less creative than her, but she doesn't know that's what she's like not consciously aware. She's not out on the other side of it enough to know that's what she's doing yet. So she just like keeps bouncing from one to the other, even though there's not much perceivable difference from outside, like between the 3 guys.
I at least definitely think she does not like any of these guys.
Yeah.
Not even the third one. I'm like, they maybe have more in common and are getting along better, but I don't think she likes them at all. Maybe she doesn't know that she doesn't like them, like how you said, Emmett. But
like a lot of those speeches, the monologues that she gives are like very reminiscent of things that people would like say to you at parties in art school.
Yeah.
You know, it'd be like the deep conversations like that you'd have with somebody. Like, and everybody would basically be reiterating some version of.
Yeah, I wrote down this movie is like being trapped at a bad party you can't leave.
Yeah.
Which, like, a lot of the movie takes place at bad parties that the characters can't leave.
Yeah.
Why is she sweaty? She's so sweaty for like the first half of this movie, and then she stops being sweaty, but she's still drinking at parties. She's just not in the exact same room she was.
Right.
She's just not sweaty anymore.
Maybe they just got an AC some point over the course of filming.
Her hair is like drenched the first half of the movie.
I have a theory that this entire movie was shot in one single room. And that's why like so much of it is zooms, that they would just like redecorate a different corner of the room every single time to make it look like a different location. I guess we should probably just like describe the style of the movie a little bit. Because it's like it's not like a movie when you think of a movie.
It's like a home video with less thought for forward momentum.
It looks like a YouTube video from 2004.
It does.
Like, the level of filmmaking is less than your iPhone could have done at the time this movie was released. So it's just like, it looks insanely cheap. And the style of filmmaking is that it's all like quick zooms on people's faces. And then it's like a whole scene where stuff is happening, but you're just looking at one character's face the whole time. And you like can't see outside. You can't see the other angles. You can't see that it's all taking place in one room.
But it's also not like the stuff that's going on is affecting that character as you watch them either.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not like one of those cool shots where sometimes you know like some badass stuff is happening around this character, but you're getting like what they feel about it, and it's really moving.
Yeah, and they're really striving for realism, which in this case means like long conversations sort of about nothing and a lot of nudity. But the other thing is that this movie is like half scripted, half improvised, and I think that you can really feel them like not knowing what to say.
Yes, they
Like-
all looked uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's all uncomfortable, and it's like I think, like, Kate, do you get like more uncomfortable when you watch like bad improv because you do a lot of improv?
Oh, for sure, yeah. It almost wasn't realistic, the realistic improvised conversations they were having. I'm like, seriously, like no one just like plays with a slinky for 5 minutes with their coworker. Like, also, what the hell were they like? Like the boss comes in towards the end and he's like, the network's gonna shut us down if we don't do some work. And it was like, a network is involved with this job. How are these people making any money? A network is involved, and all they do is just like drink at work. I'm just really confused about what they do.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, Kate, as a woman in the workforce,
Yes.
is your experience that you sit in one room with two men all day and they just flirt with you and nothing else happens ever?
No.
So a lot of this movie takes place, to set the scene for the listener, a lot of this movie takes place in, I guess, an office that is shared by Greta's character and her second and third boyfriend, respectively, Paul and Matt.
We have nothing good to say about Paul.
I hate Paul so much. I actually think this movie would at least be like halfway good if Paul was better.
Why would she ever date him? I don't know. I'm not just trying to be mean, but I'm just like, this girl's like smart and hot, and I don't know what she's doing.
Greta Gerwig, have you walked like even around the block
Yes,
that you live on? You're gonna find 5 people who are more attractive than those 3 guys.
I think that's her problem. Like
She never leaves the house.
she never leaves the house. She only dates the people that are put in front of her, and that makes her life even worse because then she has to keep hanging out with all of these people.
Yeah, so you've got Paul, who we never see do anything, but we're told that Paul has a blog and that his blog is being maybe compiled into a book that will be published. It's unclear if that's what he does at the job or not.
We never see him do anything, but the characters constantly complain that he never has time for them and is too busy. But he's just sitting there doing that thing the entire movie.
There's also a very weird subplot where he like gets calls from his agent or whatever, and the last time you ever see his character is he gets like a call on his single Bluetooth headphone, which these are the things where they were like $350 for one headphone and you would buy them directly from Verizon. He like gets a call first thing in the morning and he goes into the bathroom and he's like, it's like I always say, I've just got to trust your judgment because I don't know the protocol.
Yeah.
And like it's never explained further. There's like this weird subplot that maybe his agent is taking advantage of him, but we have no idea. So then you've got Matt, who is writing a TV show. He's writing a TV show called Bush League. which is going to get George Bush out of office when it comes out, is going to change the world in the minds of the American people.
And we should mention that Matt is played by Pete Buttigieg's father in this film. And that he and Greta Gerwig, at the end of this movie, they had a sweet little baby. And just 14 years later, that sweet little baby would be running for president.
Yeah, you've got Matt, who looks a lot like Pete Buttigieg. He's writing a TV show called Bush League. Bush makes an appearance earlier in the movie as well. And it cuts to... we keep cutting to the scene of some strange stoner-looking dude, like tall, gangly t-shirt jeans, in a different part of the office with these, like, two young corporate women.
That was the only part of the movie I liked.
Those are the best parts.
It keeps cutting to them, and he's, like, giving them weird advice. And it's never explained how this connects to the movie until the last scene. So I truly thought that this was cut from another movie. They were like, well, this thing can't be 78 minutes. We've got to put something else in there. And then it's revealed at the end that he's the boss and that the network is coming for them.
Incredible.
I did literally write down that was my favorite part of the movie, by the way.
Emmett, can I read both of you something from the official site?
Oh, please.
This is the film's official synopsis, which answers several questions I had that the movie does not. Hannah, a recent college graduate, spends a brutally hot Chicago summer falling in and out of love. As she struggles to find personal and professional fulfillment through various relationships with friends and coworkers, she risks leaving destruction in her wake. She has a love triangle with Matt and Paul, two script writers who work with her while she is an intern at a production office during the summer. While coasting from relationship to relationship, Hannah attempts to find direction for her life. The tagline of this movie is also, and this is going to make things difficult for us, when you don't know what you want, how do you know who you want?
Wait, let me roll that back again. When you don't know what you want, how do you know who you want?
Yes.
Is that really the tagline?
Yes.
That's incredible. That makes me rethink. This could be a bop.
No, don't even joke about that, Emmett.
With a tagline like that, anything's possible.
But yeah, it takes place in Chicago, which I thought it took place in New York for the entire film.
I was trying to figure out the whole time where it took place.
And she's interning at a production office, which is never made clear.
Never made clear.
That makes it make a little more sense, but it still doesn't make it coherent.
But that was something we had to go to a website from 2007 to learn.
Yeah.
Like, that's not something the movie makes clear.
Those are just basic facts of the movie. Okay. Wait, can we talk a little bit more about the cultural context of why all of these things may be so in this film?
We've mostly covered the bases. I think we're going to talk more about it next week, because then we'll be covering what kind of happens through the end of it.
Okay.
The first Mumblecore movie is considered to be Funny Ha Ha, which is directed by Andrew Bujowski, the actor who plays Paul in this.
Oh, well.
He's a very accomplished director in his own right. The first one comes out in 2002. The next one is Kissing on the Mouth, which is the first film by Joe Swanberg, the director of this film. That comes out the same year as The Puffy Chair, which is the first one that gets like critical attention, which is by the Duplass brothers, one of whom plays her first boyfriend in this. So again, they're all sort of connected.
Okay.
But this movie is 5 years into the movement and about 5 or 6 films into it too.
Okay.
But this is fairly early on. It's kind of all coming out of New York, coming out of this one scene, coming out of being shown at a lot of festivals like South by Southwest, where they were just sort of making these movies for fun and taking them. It goes on to influence a lot of other things. There are also eventually some movies that like people have heard of. Drinking Buddies, The Overnight, and Jeff Who Lives at Home. Those are like the three maybe that cross into the mainstream the most. Those are at least 3 movies that I've heard of, one of which I've seen. And those are kind of at the tail end of it, which is about 2013 is when this thing like officially dies. Although it's in this like 07, 08 sort of time when it really like peaks and then goes down from there.
It feels very 07, 08 as a genre.
Yeah, I think there's something pretty interesting. I used to be like really disparaging of this, but as recently I've been just like a little more interested in like the pre-recession art that was being made. Like all of this stuff from the late 90s and the early thousands when they were just like, nothing matters, there's no war, there's no problems with the world. We're just like going to talk about whatever we want to talk about.
But this was 2006. That's not all that stuff is true. That is like an interesting. That's an interesting time period to think about.
Yeah, I guess they're trying to get Bush out of office in this. I can give you a little bit of context for Greta too, which I think is important up front, since she's what our miniseries is about, not about a series, but about a person.
Yeah, very exciting.
She was born in Sacramento, California. Her parents, her mother was a nurse and her father was a banker. She has an older brother and a younger sister. She's the only one who's done anything related to show business, related at all to like any sort of public life. She was raised a Unitarian Universalist, which I thought was interesting. Kate, can you describe for the audience what that is?
Sure. No, I'm sorry. I have no idea what that is. Can I guess?
Yeah.
I guess someone who thinks that everything is just one thing. We're all one person. We're just all parts on one being.
Yeah, that's pretty similar.
Really?
It's described here as a liberal religion. It's basically like a group of people who all have tons of different religious beliefs, and like their agreement is to keep those all private at all costs. So it's like a group of people who like meet up in a place and keep sort of like the community aspect of organized religion and assume that everyone else is like has basic values about keeping the world good. But like some of them are Christians, some of them are Buddhists, some of them are Mormon, some of them are atheists. Like there's no like united belief whatsoever other than like to respect each other's beliefs and not talk about it.
Yeah, they don't discuss it at all.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty dope.
She attended St. Francis High School, which was an all-girls Catholic school, all of her life. She graduated that in 2002. She then moved to New York City and went to Barnard College. She entered wanting to get a musical theater degree. She ended up graduating with an English degree, trying to be a playwright. She graduated in 2006. Her senior year of college, she played a minor role in Joe Swanberg's film before this, LOL, which was the first like film thing she had ever done. And then that makes the connection between her and Joe. When she graduated, she was trying to get into playwriting MFA programs because what she wanted to do with her life was become a playwright. She was rejected from all of them. So instead, she began sort of this mumblecore, working in this mumblecore scene. She wrote this movie with Swanberg and was in it. Also, his next movie, Nights and Weekends, she also wrote and directed with him. And this is kind of like what she did when her plans of becoming a playwright fell through. She was 24 years old. She graduated in 2006, and then she was 24 years old when she made this movie. And this is a quote from her. "I was really depressed. I was 25 in 2008 and thinking this is supposed to be the best time of my life and I'm miserable. But it felt like acting was what was happening for me. So I went back to acting classes instead of writing."
It's pretty wild that she's like almost exactly the same age that we are right now when she was making this.
I mean, I was thinking about that too, and that's something that I was like a little sympathetic to this movie about.
Yeah.
Because my thought was like, if we had been born 15 years earlier, don't you think that we would have a bad mumblecore movie?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we should have some other sort of some sort of movie Like we should do that because
Yeah, we don't even have a movie.
if they can, we don't like. What can we say? We've got to. So
we've got this podcast.
That's true. Some grad school plans don't work out for us, and we start this podcast. That
is true. I did not directly the same results, but I did not get into MFA playwriting programs and then started this podcast.
yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I just feel like now it's very silly and like so sort of like focused on the problems of like such a small group that you don't really have many real problems, right?
Yeah.
But I also feel like if we were in that time, it probably would feel revolutionary and it probably would be really artistically fulfilling. And we would be like, this is real art.
And God knows if we put any of stuff on stage, we would say it was art.
How do both of you like think about the strive for realism as it's in this movie and also as we see it like depicted on the stage so often?
Kate, would you like to take this question before I go off on it?
No, please.
Okay.
I saw you revving up, please.
First off, I don't think this. I think Kate is exactly right. These conversations do not look like realistic conversations that you actually have. They're like much more meandery and pointless than that. Second off, I think that mumblecore, like where it bled into society, like I had never seen any of these movies, but I'd always heard of it. References like, oh, it's realer than real. Like it's the realist, it's like so realistic. Because I think that sometimes like there's a conflation between like good acting and realism and like realistic acting or like being naturalistic or whatever. I do think there's a difference there. I think there's just been a lot of acting where you're like, that actor could go further, that actor could be more, expressive. And it's like kind of this thing where we're like dampening things down to prove that it was serious, as opposed to like ramping up all of the acting values to prove that it's like intense and meaningful and serious. They're two different approaches, I guess, but I'd prefer something to be overacted than like whatever this is,
A lot of it reminded me of people I really know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like I know a lot of people who are like Hannah in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like I was watching like a day in the life of some of my friends.
For sure.
I don't think the style is like largely realistic. I think there are sections where it is, but then I think there are also sections where like it just looks like the camera is on too long and they're really uncomfortable and they're trying to think of anything they could say. Mm-hmm. Like, it's so easy to see what's improvised and what isn't in this movie.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I probably spent at least as much time thinking about like the circumstances of the real people making this movie while I was watching it as I did thinking about like the story it was presenting.
For sure.
I definitely agree that I could very easily tell when they were improvising and when they weren't, and that the movie suffered when they were improvising or felt less realistic when they were.
Mm-hmm.
I guess it was realistic in that I know people like this. I know that a lot of people live like these characters live and make choices like they made. But kind of to your point earlier, Emmett, about like realism in general, like I don't know that I'm that interested in something that's realistic just for the sake of being realistic. Like it's just like a little masturbatory to me that you're just like, look at how real I can be. Like, how is that benefiting the audience in any way? It's not like, I don't know. It's just like, what's the point of me watching this then? Like, if I wanted my real life, I would just like go live my life. There's nothing to like learn or gain from the story. It doesn't feel like crafted purposefully or like there was like, it was like a carefully like written piece, like, and so that kind of like, I've just never really been into that. So what you were saying resonated with me.
It's interesting what you say about it's suffering the most when it's improvised, and that when it's written, there's like a little bit stronger through line to it. And then also, I think it's important to note that Greta Gerwig as a director is very much like by the script and doesn't allow for a lot of line improvisation. And so that could come out of as being a reaction from like her early days doing these sorts of movies, where she sees it like realism. Or like, if you want realistic acting, maybe the better way to do that is to write something that's realistic, not just like put cameras on people who are uncomfortable.
For sure. And who also like, I feel like if you're going to put actors or cameras on actors and not give them a script, you have to at least give them objectives.
Oh God. Yeah.
And these actors had no objectives because they don't know what they want. Like it literally says the tagline is she doesn't know what she wants.
Yeah.
So what is she supposed to do when the camera is on her then? And that's why we get these shots of her just like rolling over 3 times in bed. Like we're just redoing the same action, looking like a jerk on the headlights.
Okay, so we're kind of getting into it a little bit, but let's just get into it. Let's go down the cast. We talked about Greta Gerwig a little bit. How was her performance in this film?
I think it was good. I think she's like definitely the best part of this movie. I think, again, the things that I liked the most were her speech about playwriting, which is obviously like comes from a very real place. And she has a couple moments that feel real. I like the moment where she's just like trying to cool off with her roommate friend. Maybe just as like a very sweaty person, but that felt like a very real, like casual moment to me.
Yeah.
And I like her, I think her scene with the final boyfriend, I've got all of their names mixed up right now.
Matt is the final boyfriend.
Yeah, her scene with Matt at the end, I think, is actually like really good, where he's talking about antidepressants and she says, I can't be careless with you anymore now that I know you have problems. And I think like everything that happens in that scene is actually like really well crafted and beautiful. So I think she has the best stuff of the movie. I don't think it's like a fully realized performance.
I also felt like her strongest moments were both that conversation and then also when she's she knows she needs to break up with her first boyfriend and can't, and he kind of essentially breaks up with her because she can't break up with him. Because I think in both of those scenes she does something that I relate to a lot, which is maybe why I like it, because it just felt a little bit more accessible or tangible. But she knows she needs to say something, but doesn't know how to and doesn't want to deal with the conflict. And so she just she gets really hot, or she starts to say it and then she stops saying it. And the guys have to ask her like 8 times what she's thinking and feeling, which I feel like is anytime I've ever had a negative feeling that someone could tell I have, they need to pull it out of me.
I just have in my notes a little heart with an arrow through it, and next to it written "Love for Greta, new crush." After her speech about Shakespeare, there's also little shakes written in the heart because she has some speech about Shakespeare when she's sitting in a bathtub wearing the goggles, and it's very endearing. I think she does act like the uncomfortable, that like thing that you're talking about, that uncomfortable moment of like, I know I need to say something, but I can't. But I wish the script then gave them something to do from that moment, like use that moment to catapult it into something else. So, yeah. Okay, moving right along on this list, we have Mark Duplass. That's boyfriend number 1. His name is Mike. You think the movie might kind of be about his decision to quit his job, and then it isn't.
I think this guy is actually pretty good. The like stuff that felt the most like a real movie that had like a tone was their first 20 minutes when they're together.
That's fair.
I feel like he's the only other person who has like close to the same level of acting chops that she does. And he also felt like a very specific sort of person that I do know in real life. Like a guy who is like several years older than his girlfriend, is like always hanging out with these younger kids and quits his job and is just like doing drugs, hanging out with these kids, quits his job and is gonna go on a soul searching mission. Like that feels like a very specific sort of person I know.
I think he was definitely the best of the guys. And he also, I guess the script at least developed his character more than anyone else. He literally said like, I'm a nihilist. Like, this is what I believe. This is how I see the world. Like he was the only one that got like any kind of identifying belief system or worldview. I also feel like we knew he just really wanted to have fun and stay with this girl, because that scene when they're at the beach and he knows she's going to break up with him, he says like, I think I handle breakups really poorly, like even worse than most people. And it felt like he was kind of being manipulative or trying to make her feel bad about the fact that she wanted to break up with him. it felt like one of the only lines in the whole movie that had a motivation behind it. I also couldn't believe when I think they're like fighting or something, and he's trying to convince her that she likes him. I'm not exactly sure what's going on in the scene, but he says like, I get it. We have sex and I don't know your sister's names.
I wrote that down too.
I was like, what? Because at first I was like, oh, maybe don't break up with him. But then I was like, all right, ditch this dude. Screw that.
My feelings about Mike were greatly improved by the second 2/3 of the movie. And that's all I have to say about him. Yeah. Moving right along.
It felt to me like the movie was written up until like the scene where Paul comes into her house. Like the first like 30 minutes seem like there is a narrative.
Yes.
That is pushing towards something and that is like carefully crafted. And then it becomes like a Paul wasteland for a while.
Yeah.
For what feels like an hour at least.
And it makes no sense. When she was like, do you want to come up and meet my roommate? I was like, what is about to happen in this movie?
Is she really about to? Yeah. With Paul?
There is a weird boss dynamic with Paul, who I realize is not her boss, but like the first time they start to like cuddle up, he's talking about how good she is at work and like her performance at work, how she's the thing that like makes him, and that was like so gross.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're already talking about him. It's Andrew Bujalski as Paul, boyfriend number 2. We have nothing good to say about Paul.
No. I don't have anything at all to say about Paul, honestly.
Really, he's just kind of clammy and gross.
Yeah, they really did him dirty with the one shot where the screen is like 75% his butt.
Oh yeah, that too.
In those 2007 Levi blue jeans,
baggy ass grandfather jeans.
But just like when they were in that situation where they were like awkwardly cuddling at work and looking out the window.
Oh, I hate it.
While the other dude was working, I was like, this is what high school was like. Like, I remember being in these situations.
Yeah. Okay, moving right along. It's Kent Osborne, otherwise a.k.a. Pete Buttigieg's grandfather, playing Matt, boyfriend number 3.
At one point in the movie, he was my favorite character when he did the hot dog body. And then from that point on, I hated him. I think by that point in the movie, I was just like when she got with him and he had a little more screen time, I was just so frustrated with the path this was taking that it was a little hard to engage with his character.
For sure.
I'm not sure if I gave him a fair shot. It definitely seems like she liked him the most, but as far as his acting, yeah, I guess I don't have a ton to say about him.
I'm not sure if it did seem like she liked him the most. I think it seems like they're the healthiest relationship.
Okay, yeah, that's more accurate.
Yeah, and that he is like the healthiest of the 3 dudes.
Yes.
I like him. I think his stuff is almost too little too late to register because he's been with so much of Paul. And there's also like a weird subplot where it seems like maybe him and the roommate are being set to hook up, even though like he kind of clearly likes Hannah. But he's like coming over and they're trying to like set up him with Hannah's roommate, who is she was pretty compelling to me. She is like definitely like by far the worst improviser and like the least comfortable being on screen. But there was like some sort of compelling aspect to her character. Maybe just that she wasn't involved in the shenanigans that every other character was.
But she's really one where you're like, oh, I know that person. And that other moment where she's like, this is getting weird. I don't want to like sit next to this guy. I'm just going to leave and like let you do what you want, you know? Oh, wait, I wanted to say about Ken Osborne. I also think he's played as a comic character in the beginning, like almost to the point of absurdity with like the hot dog body. That is so weird.
That's what broke you? You couldn't handle the hot dog body?
I love the hot dog
After
body.
you see the hot dog body, you're like, I don't know if I can take you seriously in a film ever again.
That's just that 2007 comedy, man. That was the funniest thing in the world.
Okay, that's fair. Now, Kate, it is time for us to introduce to you and to the listener a new segment. In this segment called Everyday Chalamet, we will review Timothée Chalamet's performance in this film. So, Kate, let me give you the great honor of being the first ever everyday Chalamet reviewer and tell me what you thought of young Timothée in this film.
Wow. Since he was so young in this film, because remember it came out in 2007.
Yeah, he was 2 years old.
He was 2 years old. I think he did a pretty good job. We didn't see a lot of him, and 2-year-olds are famously loud. And so I'm impressed that he was able to keep himself so under the radar and really respect the other actors. This is Mumblecore after all. He couldn't be running around screaming. So I think I'm sure that from this movie, his first film, everyone pegged him as a star and knew that, this was really his industry. I think he had the best performance in the film.
I think there's something interesting that Greta Gerwig made this movie when she was 24. And then when Timothée Chalamet was 24, he made Little Women.
Whoa.
Wow. How old is he?
Greta Gerwig. He's 25 right now. Okay. He was 12 years old when this movie
12 years old.
He also was not in this movie, if that wasn't clear.
I loved his performance in this film. Every day, and it would never be too many days. Thank you. All right. On to our next segment.
Wade has no opinion on Timothée Chalamet.
Wait, I thought you just gave your opinion on Timothée Chalamet.
I did.
Did you?
Oh, it was just fact. There was no opinion in there. It was he's 12 years old.
Do you have more opinions on Timothée Chalamet's performance in this film?
I'm sorry, Evan. I'm afraid to say that much like every actor in this movie, I'm having trouble yes-anding your bit.
Fair enough. Okay, so we're going to move on to another new segment. Wow. Okay. Greta off without you. We are going to say which of the boyfriends in all of these movies we would date. Not which one is the best, not which one the main character should date, whatever. Just the one that we personally would date. We think that there are boyfriends in all of these movies. There definitely are in the other two that we've seen and in this one.
So on the table, we've got Mike, who is boyfriend number 1. We've got Paul, who is boyfriend number 2, and Matt, who's number 3.
Can I answer the question 2 ways?
Sure.
Okay, so first, who would I date? Would being like realistically, like I know myself and I know who I'm gonna date, and then also I'm gonna answer like who would I like actually want to pick out of these 3 people. Who I know I would date is Mike. Yeah, the guy that's older than you who doesn't have a lot going on and stuff like that. I think who I would actually like to date and who I'm going to try to date more people like if I have to choose between these 3, Matt. Yeah, he seemed like the most genuine of the 3 and the person who was actually the most interested in her, even though it's funny that like I think Matt is the one who tells her Paul is crazy about her. Paul is so clearly not crazy about her. And so I appreciate, I don't know. I just think that like Matt is the one having actual conversations with her. They talk about something important and they have some things in common. They kind of have fun together a little bit in the tub. I don't think I saw her like genuinely having fun with Paul or Mike. That's who I would want myself to pick, but I know that I would probably pick Mike.
I think that it would probably be Mike. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that he's the best choice, but I just feel like he would be the one who is most interesting. Mm-hmm. And the one who I would be like most attracted to. I don't think it would be a long or certainly not satisfying relationship. But I do think like which of them would I be most likely to date would be Mike. Emmett, who would you be Greta off without?
I think I have to agree it would be Mike as well. I feel like archetypally relationship wise you want to be more in the Matt kind of relationship, I guess. Right. I mean, it still doesn't seem like it's bringing either party a lot of joy, so maybe like a step above, but in that category. But Mike is honestly of those 3 actual people the one that I would probably end up dating.
He's just so broody.
Yeah,
he just feels like he has something to contribute, which neither of the other guys feel like.
That's true.
Like Matt feels like he genuinely cares about you and is like genuinely listening to and processing everything you have to say, where Mike feels like he's never once heard you speak. but Mike feels like he has something to say, which neither of the other two feel like.
Yeah.
Emmett, I know that we're in segments, but if I can break us just for a moment.
Yeah.
We haven't actually talked at all yet about what this movie is like most remembered for today.
Oh, okay.
Looking through a Letterboxd and Twitter and like whenever people talk about the movie, which is all of the nudity in it.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
The film starts with a close-up of Greta Gerwig's breasts in the shower. That's the first thing you see. There's a lot of nudity throughout the whole movie, mostly from her, but we also see all three of the boyfriends in like various states of shirtlessness and undress.
And you do see great granddaddy Buttigieg's member in this.
Yeah, you see Matt fully naked as the last shot of the movie. And the thing that is notable here is that all of the nudity in the movie is purposely non-sexual. Like it's all in situations of people like sleeping or breaking up or cooling off or showering. And there's only one sex scene in the movie, which is done fully clothed and like looking at people's faces. So there's like something interesting they're going after there. This is certainly a hallmark of realism on the stage too. Like it feels like whenever you hear that a play is like striving for realism, it means that you're going to see some full frontal nudity.
I love, just a side note, I love that that's like considered a hyper realistic play, is that like, oh, when everyone breaks up naked, when you're breaking up, you want to be as physically vulnerable as possible as well. You want to make sure that you're naked while you're crying. The nudity, I don't think I had strong feelings about it.
Because it is in the first shot, it's like, oh, hey, like this is going to be a movie where there's naked bodies on screen and it is not like going to be sexy at all. And like it establishes that like so early on that I don't think that like I just like kind of ignore it, or not like ignore it, but like it becomes just like part of what's going on and isn't like salacious or whatever. But it's also just like not necessary. And so it always made me think of like whenever I'd see it, is I would be like, oh, well, like, is the actor comfortable? Especially in like an improv situation where you're naked is like that seems like a little more vulnerable than a lot of people are comfortable with being. Maybe I'm not like saying that they weren't, but the same like non-sexualized nudity was shown in a higher budget film, I wouldn't feel as weird about it. You know what I mean? Because I wouldn't be worrying about the actors as much.
Yeah, I at times had some of those thoughts, but she did write the movie too. So
yeah, that's true. I just, that one part where the dude was like licking her arm and she wasn't wearing any clothes, and like he was just like trying to kiss her like arm and like kiss her on the face, but he like was like licking her arm and she gets like really freaked out about it. And like in that moment, like I couldn't tell the difference between like character freaking out and like actress freaking out and being like, no, dude, like that's too far. Don't.
It feels like you may be just like brushing up against the fact that there's not a lot of acting in this movie.
That could be true.
So when there is acting, you're kind of like, wait, are you okay? Like, are you really hurt? Because you certainly could not be acting like you're sad in a breakup scene. So like, what was happening that was making you really sad in real life?
Okay. Touche. Oh, she's pretty good in this.
I think you see a lot of the foundations, I mean, especially of her writing, which is like the thing that we are analyzing in this series. I think, again, more so kind of in like the scenes that she's improving monologues in. But again, I think that scene with her and the last boyfriend is really good and really well written.
So we're kind of already in this once again. Segue right into it. Protagonists and what do they want? So
I'm gonna say Hannah.
Okay, bold.
Bold. So bold. Too bold, one might say. I don't know. Oh God. I mean, I was asking myself this question, but anyway, I don't know. I mean, I think if I'm going to actually like do the exercise and make myself think, I would say that, sorry, I'm trying to put in some effort. I think she wants like more meaning or, purpose in her life, whether it's like, I think that might be like why she it seems like she chases a lot of highs. When she first started talking to Paul, I felt like he was like complimenting her, and I could just see her being like, you think so? Like, really? And just kind of like fishing for a little more. I mean, it's the only thing that I could possibly justify as to why she would like want to date really any of these three guys. But then as soon as she does start dating them and it's really not exciting or providing any kind of meaning or purpose, I feel like that's when she's like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe what she wants is to figure out what she wants. Or maybe it's to like find more purpose and meaning in her life, both through writing and dating.
Yeah, I think it's Hannah. I think she mostly wants to take the stairs.
They never said anything about the stairs.
Not a thing about the stairs.
Not a thing about the stairs.
No, it has to do, and we'll get into this a little bit later, but it has to do with the rhythm of how mumblecore titles work.
Ugh.
It needed a thing. It couldn't just be Hannah has boyfriends.
I think it's a genuinely good title. Like, I love the
Yeah,
title.
it's a great title.
Just you don't even see the stairs, so it makes it tough.
It's shocking because she's living in an 8-story walk-up.
When you mentioned that, I was reminded of the stuff that I related to the most in the movie and thought was like most powerful, which is the speech she gives about crushes, where she's like, it's like the most exciting, most thrilling thing when you have a crush, and then like when you act on it, it becomes something real and less fun and problematic, and you just like lose that.
And people can get hurt.
So I think I don't know, I feel like she's in a very real place that I have been in at points of my life that I know a lot of people who are in, of like just sort of like chasing the thrills and like not sort of dealing with whatever the larger problem is.
Yeah.
It sounds like if we can extrapolate that it's possible that that's how Greta felt in real life making this movie too, that she was just sort of like, this is a fun, successful thing, so I'll do it even though it's not what I want to be doing. Just like devote myself to this other thing that's not really what I want to be doing. So what does she want? I don't know. I mean, I don't know. Maybe like some sense of stability or whatever. I think it's kind of interesting that like the happy moment the movie, or that she like makes a milestone out of like peeing while the guy's in the shower, that it's like an element of stability that they've gotten to. Yeah. And then it ends with them like her and the last boyfriend naked in the bathtub playing trumpet together, which also feels like a very just sort of like a quiet, like happy place she's gotten to with another person. So I don't know. There's something in there.
I agree with both of you that it is like kind of this early 20s stage of life to be in where you're like, I don't know what I want, but I'm willing to try a lot of things. And I guess there's only 4 people living in the city with her. So she dates 3 of them and lives with the other one. I mean, like, I get that. You like, we've all been there. Like the thing that you want most is to like know what to do next, is like have a concrete plan of what to do next. I've more speaking out of experience than necessarily what she wants in this movie, but like, or to like know what to do next and like know that it's the right thing to do. I don't know. There's that kind of horrifying moment where you like spill out of college and you're like, well, hell, now I have to like actually figure out what I'm going to do, not just like on a day-to-day basis, but like I have to figure out some structure for my life, like ongoing, and not have other people giving you structure and telling you how to do things. So like, you know, it can be kind of alarming about that. And like to find a sense of direction out of that is no small feat. I don't know that that's ever like articulated in the movies as such as her desire. And I also don't think, like, let's be clear, I do think that's a very realistic thing to want. I don't think it's a very powerful thing to push behind as a character. That's what makes it universal, but it doesn't make it very playable.
I think there's also something there in like the college life transition where you kind of like rush into monogamous relationships that this movie like explores a little bit, where like she kissed Paul once and now he's like sleeping at her house every night and she's always around him.
Oh god.
And we see that happen like 3 times. And I think that's such a real thing in life too, where especially when you're kind of just first living on your own, you like jump into those things, but then it's like, wow, like I kissed Paul 2 days ago, and now for the rest of my life, every day he's going to be here talking to his agent in the morning. You know what I mean? Like, I think the movie is exploring that a little bit.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's a lot what she brushes up with both of the guys is like, I think the problem in both of those relationships is that they're just around each other too much.
Mm-hmm.
And for as much as they have to do all day, like they just sit at work. If they had work to do, maybe they could focus on something else.
It's really interesting saying that in context of like quarantine, because this feels like a movie that happened in quarantine.
It does.
Like they're just sitting around, they don't have anything to do.
They feel stuck for like no reason.
Yeah.
I think, read to my theory, that's because this movie probably was filmed in one room with 5 actors, and like the only thing you can do in a room with 5 people is be like, well, who should I kiss next?
Oh, man. Now we're going to move on to a classic segment. The listener will be quite familiar by now. MVP OTH, the MVP other than Hannah in this film.
Mm-hmm.
Kate, you said that you had answers, what you thought your answer was going to be before you watched the movie.
Yeah, before I watched the movie, some of the segments that I knew were coming, I predicted what I would think. So I did predict the protagonist would be Hannah, and that what she wanted would be to take the stairs. Wade and I talked about that beforehand. And then my prediction for who I thought the MVP other than Hannah would be, not knowing any of the characters existed, I had an idea that this was probably going to be a little bit of romantic comedy. There's like a heart on the poster. It's her like snuggled up to Mark Duplass on the cover of the movie. So I was like, there's going to be some element of romance here. So I'm going to pick my MVP OTH as who I always think is the best character in any rom-com, which is the main guy's first girlfriend before he ends up with the girl. That character is always so freaking funny. She's like always a little ditzy and like kind of mean and just like so silly and has the most ridiculous gags. So I picked my MVP OTH prediction was going to be Mark Duplass's first girlfriend before Hannah. That character doesn't exist, unfortunately. So for me, it's the boss who gives the 2 girls weird advice on how to answer the phone.
Hell yeah. All right, Wade, who is your MVP OTH?
I don't know. I guess I'm going to go with Rai Rousseau Young as the roommate. There are other performances in this movie that I think are as good as hers, but I think the fact that she is a constant for the movie, like she's the thing that is sort of like compelling and interesting throughout all of this movie's 83 minutes. And that in the first 10 minutes, she has like the worst performance I've ever seen anyone give on screen ever, as she like pretends to search for things in the kitchen. Emmett, who's your MVP OTH?
Okay, well, this is difficult. Kate, when you said that bit about the first girlfriend of the main guy, that kind of makes Mike that character in this movie, doesn't it? In some way, right? Like, and we all agreed that we would rather date Mike than anybody else. So I think that's interesting. Yeah. I think that's
one more point for Mike on the dateability is that he's definitely the hottest of the 3 guys.
Oh yeah,
like by far. The listeners can't see, but they're nodding a lot.
Yeah,
they're not leaving me on a limb with this one.
Yeah.
Silent after I said that.
Giving a stoic eye squint and nod. But I'm gonna say that I have to go with Paul for this, because if it weren't for Paul, this movie might be a movie that someone would recommend to someone. But since Paul is in this movie, it will never get recommended to anyone. And therefore, he is doing the most work for this film by keeping people from watching it. Thank you. Galaxy brained it. Okay. Now I have one final segment that I want to go into before we sign off for the evening. I've compiled a quick game for you. And the way this game is going to work is I will ask a question. I think you both get to answer it, and then I'll tell you which of you got it right, but you'll alternate who goes first. Whatever. We'll get loose. We'll get wild.
Yeah.
Okay. The name of this game is Mumblecore or Mumble Rap, where I will read you two names, and you will have to tell me which one is Mumblecore and which one is the name of a mumble rap album. Which one is the name of a Mumblecore film, and which one is the name of a mumble rap album?
I would just like to point out that one of us is literally in one of these industries and one of us is absolutely not.
And we should point out that they're very separate arts. So separated by about 10 years. Just for the listener at home.
For the listener.
For the listener at home. Question number 1. So Much Fun, Your Sister's Sister.
Your sister's sister is Mumblecore.
So Much Fun is mumble rap. I'm trying to think of who it is because I know I have it downloaded on my iPhone. I'm picturing the album art right now.
All right. Okay, so they both get it right. So that's 1-1 there.
Who was it by?
Oh no, I don't do any research on any of this. I just put I did the least possible amount of work to make this game fun. Okay. Wade, you get the first go this time.
Okay.
The names are Creep and just a single question mark.
Oh, that's hard. That's really tough. I think Creep for Mumblecore would be like too on the nose. So I'm going to go that Creep is the mumble rap album.
I was also thinking that just a question mark, it sounds more mumblecore to me than mumble rap.
Okay. You're both wrong.
Ooh.
Creep is the Mumblecore film and question mark is the album. All right. Question number 3. Kate, it's back to you.
Okay.
Digging for Fire, Painting Pictures.
Painting Pictures is album, Digging for Fire is film.
Yeah, I've seen Digging for Fire. So Digging for Fire is Mumblecore.
All right, so you both get it right. You are neck and neck right now. Number 4, Kate, over to you. Dying to Live, Medicine for Melancholy.
Ooh, I think Dying to Live is core. Medicine for Melancholy is album.
I think Dying to Live is mumble rap album.
Okay. Wade gets 1. All right, pulling ahead. Baghead, Dog Walk.
This is again where I know in doing my research that. So maybe you should have. Okay. Is it fair to have Kate go first?
Yeah, let's just have Kate go first every time. All right, Kate.
I thought I was going to get a freebie. Baghead album, Dog Walk film.
A Baghead film.
Okay.
No!
All right. Wade's pulling ahead. It is right now 4-2. Up next, Barefoot Worlds, Mutual Appreciation.
Okay. Mutual Appreciation film, Barefoot Worlds album.
Yeah, Barefoot Worlds sounds more like the album. I don't know either of these.
All right, you both get it. Okay, number 7, Kate. Good Intentions, Drinking Buddies.
Good Intentions album, Drinking Buddies film.
Yeah, Drinking Buddies is also a film I have seen.
Yeah, I realized once once it was in the show notes that was probably going to be an easier one to know about. But
certainly a film that Kate has seen too, since it has Anna Kendrick in it.
Oh my God. Pitch Perfect performance every single time.
I didn't realize I was coming on this podcast to be abused.
Kate, number 8, the Guatemalan Handshake or Emergency Tsunami.
Guatemalan Handshake album, Emergency Tsunami film.
Emergency Tsunami album. I don't necessarily think that any of these films would have the budget to put a tsunami in. So that's what I'm going with.
You were correct. All right. We got 2 more here, but I do think that Wade has mounted an insurmountable lead. But we're going to continue nevertheless. So number 9, Daddy Longlegs or Daddy?
Daddy Longlegs album, Daddy film.
I agree.
You're both wrong.
No way.
Daddy Longlegs is the movie and Daddy is the mumble rap album. Number 10, to bring it on back home. Kate, I'll cut you a deal. If you win this, it's double or nothing. You'll beat Wade.
I win the whole thing.
You'll win the whole thing if you get this question right, and you will get absolutely nothing except to say that you beat Wade at trivia on the first ever podcast to ever talk about Hannah Takes the Stairs, the Greta Gerwig
right.
2007 vehicle. Question number 10. Heartbreak Kodak or Sun Don't Shine?
Oh, that's hard. Heartbreak Kodak album, Sun Don't Shine film.
Oh, that's hard. Sun Don't Shine sounds more like an album, but I know Kodak Black, so I'm wondering if Heartbreak Kodak is like one of his albums. So I'm going to say the same. I'm going to say Heartbreak Kodak album.
Well, you were both right, but I did promise Kate that if she got this question right, she would win, despite Wade's several point lead.
Unbelievable.
So congratulations, Kate.
I love this podcast.
You have won the game.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Kate, now would be a great time to tell the audience as you are flushed from your victory, any plugs that you might have, any projects that you have coming up, any place that people can find your work, your voice.
Unfortunately, I did just delete my Twitter, which was maybe my most well-known source of content. I am working on like a very long-term project. It's like a year goal. It'll be end of the year. So I guess stay tuned for that. I don't know how you'll stay tuned because I'm off the internet, but I hopefully will get back on this podcast at some point in time and love to give an update then.
Hell yeah. We can't wait to have you back for another Mumblecore classic, Sharknado.
That's what I get for just like inviting myself back without being asked at all. Just telling the listeners, just so everyone knows I will be coming back.
Do you have any final thoughts about the film?
That I truly did not understand her sense of style at all. I live in Brooklyn and I still can't put together what she was trying to do. She had a lot of funky, fun rings, but then also like Bermuda khaki shorts down to her knees that she would wear at the same time. I just don't understand how any of it goes together. So that was another kind of like little beef I had with the movie. And I do see people dressed very interestingly every day. That's my final thought.
We will talk a little bit next week about, well, obviously this whole series of what Greta goes on to do. Mm-hmm. We'll talk about what Joe Swanberg goes on to do because he's in our film next week. So I just wanted to call out that Andrew Bujalski, the dreaded Paul, ends up writing and directing the film Support the Girls in 2018, which was like pretty well known and beloved. It has Regina Hall in like a very celebrated performance. And Rai Russo Young, who plays the roommate, goes on to direct The Sun Is Also a Star for Warner Brothers, like a big studio YA rom-com. Both of movies that I heard were really good in the year 2019. So it's like cool that some people went on from this moment of indie filmmaking and like also managed to break into like the current moment of indie filmmaking we have, which is clearly like pretty indebted to this original one, even if we like vastly prefer
A24 over this.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, made by the same people, right? I mean, Greta is making these movies we love, and we're tracing back to see where she came from.
Tracing back to see where Timothée Chalamet came from all the way since 2006.
My final thought is that I just wanted to read Joe Swanberg's director's statement. This is taken from the 2007 Hannah Takes the Stairs website. I value the trust of my collaborators more and more with each new project. It is a gift, and I treasure it. With Hannah Takes the Stairs, despite initial fears and hesitations, or perhaps because of them, many people whom I love and admire were willing to put their busy lives on hold for days and weeks to gather in Chicago and sleep on the floor with me in a rented apartment and make a movie. We shared ideas, fears, loves, successes, and failures. We stayed up late. We danced. It was magical. I grew as a person just as much as I did as a filmmaker. I couldn't ask for anything more.
This is a film that I really appreciate the process of more than the product. Like, I think that statement is so beautiful and like really makes me feel kind of like bad about like giving it so much, like such a hard time and like not liking it. That doesn't make me like it. It doesn't like make the experience of watching it better, but it does like, it softens my opinion of it somewhat. yeah, these people like got together and they made this thing and it didn't exist before that, and they did it, and like that's pretty cool. Like they did this for a tiny amount of money. It launched careers. It like was a trajectory for a lot of their careers. I don't know. Yeah. That's cool. That's like it's like a more cool as like a fossil of a bunch of artists' careers than it is like something to go and watch if you want to watch a movie.
In these early Joe Swanberg movies, it's not just Greta. I mean, it's Greta Gerwig, but it's also the Duplass brothers. Mm-hmm. It's also Lena Dunham. It's also Jake Johnson. Like all of these people start their careers in the Joe Swanberg movies. So that's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, how much bad theater do we see where people had like a great process making it, right? Like so much fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how much like theater where you really like it and then you go and talk to them after and they're like, oh, it was the worst thing to make. We were actively hostile against the director.
Yeah, for sure.
It makes me hungry to make more things again, though. Like watching this and talking about it. So that's cool.
You're ready to take the stairs?
Ready to take the stairs. Yeah. Maybe even the escalators. Okay. So up next on this podcast, which we are calling Unforgettable, in case you didn't remember. Next up, we will be watching the Greta Gerwig classic Nights and Weekends. Join us next week.
Directorial debut, which everybody pretends was Lady Bird, but we'll get the tea on that next week. Stay frosted, everyone. We love you. Good night. Cinema Bums is a production of DKG Podcast. It is created and produced by Wade Lawrence Holloman and me, Emmett Temple. Wade also edits and mixes this podcast. Our theme music is by Zane Holloman, who you can find on Bandcamp, and our show art is by Autumn Beckner. Our social media is managed by Laura Bennett. If you like what you hear, please tell all your friends and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts, the 2 best ways to spread the word about our work. You can also follow us on Instagram at CinemaBums or email us at cinemabumspod@gmail.com. Don't flake on us. We'll be back next week.